Hey guys, it's Ashley and I'm back with a video. Today I'm going to be teaching you all about creating with Infusible ink. We're going to be using the Cricut Joy for this project. However, you can totally use the Explorer 2 or the Maker as well. So this is a great project for keeping all your supplies handy and organized. And I love how this turns out. This is great because Infusible ink allows you to use the materials, wash them, and you don't have to worry about it coming out of the project or fading or peeling or anything over time. So this is a great way to make something that lasts, and this might be a cool gift idea. If you haven't yet, make sure to click the subscribe button and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any future content. Let's talk about what supplies you'll need for this project. We're going to be using the Cricut Joy. You can also use the Cricut Explorer 2 or the Cricut Maker. Any of those machines will work really well for this type of project. I'm also using the Cricut Easy Press 2. This is in the 6x7 inch one. The reason I'm using this one is because we're working with a small project, so using a smaller one makes sense for it. We're using Infusible ink. This is made specifically for the Joy, but there are larger rolls if you're using another machine. We're using the color black, a pair of scissors, and some sort of weeding tool. This one is the interchangeable tip option that Cricut now offers. Also, I'm going to be using one of the sets of cosmetic bag blanks. It's a package of 3 different blanks that are perfect for using with Infusible ink, so I thought this would be a really great one. I'm also going to be using the standard grip mat in the 12-inch length and an easy press mat as well. Hey guys, so we're inside the desktop version of Cricut Design Space, and today we're going to be creating a series of little bags that are going to be useful for what we're dealing with right now, which is COVID still. So because of that, we're wearing face masks everywhere, and it can get kind of confusing which masks are clean, which masks are dirty. So I thought this would be a really great project to use. What we can do is create these labeled cosmetic bags, and that way we can carry our clean ones and we have a place to put our dirty ones, and so they're ready to be washed. So let's go ahead and kind of look through here and create a design. We're going to select under images. This is the desktop version. If you're using a phone or a tablet, you'll find this option on the bottom left hand corner of the screen. So we'll select images. I typed in the word face mask, and I wanted to use one of these face mask designs as the front of it. And honestly, I'm thinking something like this would be really nice, so I'm going to insert that as an image. I'm going to duplicate it because I'm going to be making one clean and one dirty. So the first step is I'm selecting this, so I'm just highlighting it. On the desktop, you can go up to the top and you can right-click duplicate, or you can right-click on your mouse and hit duplicate. If you're doing this and you're following along with a tablet or a phone, it'll be on the bottom of the screen underneath the actions panel. So now let's take a look at the text. We want to create some text to have it say clean and dirty. When you click on the text button, you can find a whole list of different fonts. I went ahead and selected one that's called Four Seasons Home Decor. It's a single layer cutting and writing font. It has kind of a Ray Dunn farmhouse feel, and I think a nice, clean, simple font would be great for this. So you can always search through the different fonts and play around to find a font that you like better, but I wanted something that was really classic and simple. So I'm going to type in the word dirty, and then I'm going to type in the word clean. So I'm going to go in and create another word. We'll click on text. So what we can do is just arrange them however we like. So you can put it on the top of the mask, you can put it on the bottom of the mask, however you think is going to look the nicest. For visual reference, it might be handy to have them set up so that one is in one way and one is the other. And that way visually, when you see the bag, even without reading, you'll remember that it's set up that way. So I think I'm going to do the clean one where it's on top here and the dirty one where it's on the bottom. And we can kind of play around by selecting the item that we want and moving it. So let's play around with the sizing of the font a little bit and decide exactly how big we want it. I think I don't want it to be super huge. I think that's pretty good. Let's take a look at our cosmetic bags and measure them. I went ahead and measured the cosmetic bags. They're 9 inches by 6 inches. So what we want to do is make sure our design will fit within that. First, I want to make sure this is centered. So I'm going to take both of these and I'm drawing a box around them. You can do with your finger if you're using your phone or your tablet. And I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to go a line, and we're going to center horizontally. And that will make sure that they're both on the same middle line here. If you're doing this on a tablet or a phone, that'll be on the bottom underneath the edit section, I believe. You can choose a line. Now we're going to continue that step with this one as well. I'm going to go and select a line and then center horizontally, and that just moves them so they're both equal. And when you have your design ready, you can draw a box around it. You can click attach, and attach will keep them in the same place. If you want it to cut out as a single piece, you can click weld. And when you click weld, if they were different colors, it would make them all the same color. So don't use weld unless you want it to be cut out of the exact same material. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to draw a box around it. I'm going to select attach because I want them to stay in place, and then click weld. Now let's adjust and play around with the sizing. So we remember our bag is approximately 9 inches by 6 inches. So on this side here, we can't go any larger than 6 inches, and we can't go any longer than 9 inches here. So thinking about that, we have to keep in mind that the design is going to look its best if you center it right in the middle and you leave a little gap visually around it. Because when you're holding something, it's likely that it won't be always flat. So you want to make sure that the design is kind of moved in towards the center. So I don't want to go super large with my design. In fact, I think I'm going to keep it around the, I would say 6 inch mark. I think that will look the best because having more visual space around it will probably look the very best. So I'm going to change this one to the same sizing. Now that those are ready, I think this is going to be perfect if we use the larger bag for anything that would be an essential, like maybe hand sanitizer or anything that you would keep in your car that you want to have handy. So I'll go ahead and create a label for this one as essentials, and I'm going to use the same font with this one. This is going to be a little simpler looking, but I really love the font, so I'm just going to type in essentials. The larger cosmetic bag is approximately 9.6 inches by 7.5 inches. So because of this, we can go a little bit longer lengthwise and it should look fine. I'm thinking probably about the 7-inch mark for this one would look as nice as possible. And that way it still has some visual space around it, but it will make a big enough of an impact on there. So that's ready to go. And I'm going to make sure this is welded so it's cut as one single piece. So now that we have our designs completed, we can select Make It. We're working with Infusible ink for this, so I'm going to select with the matte. Now that it's set everything to the matte, we can move this around if we need to. If you want to have a little bit of extra space, you totally can. And we'll be using the larger matte for this. And so I will get that one ready. Because we're working with Infusible ink, you want to make sure that you're mirroring your design. So we're going to go select Mirror. If you're working with the mobile app, you'll find the option to mirror along the top of the screen. So make sure you select Mirror for each screen that you're working with. And then we'll go back to the original one and we'll select Continue. Let's select which material we're using. We're going to click Browse All Materials, and I'm just going to type in Infusible. And we'll select the Infusible ink transfer sheet. Now all we have to do is make sure our fine point blade is loaded, and we're going to load our mat. Make sure that the mirror is turned on, which it is, and we're going to put the material inked side up. To get started, let's open up our roll of Infusible ink. This is heat activated. And what makes this so unusual and unique is that you can use it very similarly to how you would use something like iron-on, but you will get permanent lasting results. And it's usually very vibrant if you're using colors, as well as this doesn't remove from the material that you're working with. So if you're using this on something that has a high polyester base, you'll get a really nice vibrant result. and it becomes infused with the ink, becomes infused with the material itself, which is amazing. So I'm just going to remove this. The package comes with a bunch of different things. The first is a little test sheet, so if you wanted to test how it functions, this is the same material that you'll find for the Cricut t-shirts. Also included are several sheets of the butcher paper that you'll use for this project. There's a little handy guide that you can follow as well. And then the sheets themselves. So there's a couple sheets in here that are pretty long. You'll notice that we chose the color black, but this looks more like a brown color. The reason for this is it's heat activated, so it won't look the color that you see on the package until heat has been applied to it. So let's move all of this out of our way, and what we'll do is load up the project inside Cricut Design Space. We're going to select the material that we're working with, and we're going to apply this to the mat. So I'm going to take the standard grip mat and remove the cover. If you keep the cover on your mat, it keeps it nicer and you don't have to worry about anything getting onto it. So we're going to make sure you have clean, dry hands when you're working with this. We don't want to have any fingerprints or oils transfer to this because it will interfere with the design. So when we place this on here, we're going to be placing this face up with the design up, and I'm going to load this onto the mat. Make sure that it is adhered to your mat. You can use a brayer for this if you have one, which is one of the little rolls that you can use to roll over. Open up your machine and make sure that you have the fine point blade installed in there. And then what we'll do is we'll make sure that we have the correct material selected, which is the Infusible ink, and also that we have mirrored the design on every single screen for it. So that way the design is cut backwards, and when you apply it, it applies correctly. Now we'll load the mat into the machine. Select go and it will start cutting. Now we'll select unload. And we'll remove this from the mat by turning this over. And we'll roll the mat away from our project. You can cut away from the remaining amount and just save the leftovers for another project. We're ready to load our second mat into the machine. So we're unloading our mat here, and same thing, we're going to flip our mat over and then just turn this away from it to remove. You can cut the leftover away from your project. And we can cut away the excess of this and save it for another project. So even though I used 2 rolls of the transfer sheets, I still have quite a bit left. I have 1 full roll, that section there, that section, and this section. So I can still use a ton of this for other projects. So what I'm going to do is roll this back up, and I will put this back inside my transfer sheet box. If you can roll them back up and put them inside the little closure, it definitely helps. That way they stay resistant to any light. Our next step is to weed the design. That just means to remove the extra material from the project that you're working on. Infusible ink is a kind of a thicker paper material, and then there is a plastic carrier sheet on the back. So the plastic sheet has the adhesive on it. So we want to remove away from our design. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just slowly peeling this away. If you get to something that has fine details, this is where you're going to break out your tool here, and you can use this to hold down your design that you're working on and just tear this away from there. If you're having problems with removing the infusible ink from the design, you can always use your tool, your weeding tool, right underneath it, and just use that to help you lift it up from the paper. Another tip to keep in mind is when you're working with something that has a lot of detail, if you have a big section and you feel like it might get in the way, you can always take this and cut away from the extra. So if you ever feel like it's impeding what you're doing, you can just use your scissors and cut it away. So I'm just, as you can see, I'm just using my tool to hold down the design itself while I remove the pieces from it. So I'm just pushing this down. So we're just going to remove this back, and if you have any problems with it doing like what it just did there, you can use your tool to kind of lift up the paper. Sometimes the paper wants to stick to the vinyl adhesive that's on there. So this is the piece that we've removed so far. And if you flipped it over, you can see that there's still all the little pieces inside the words. So we're going to go in there and use our little tool and remove the little centers. And if you flip this around, it'll look like it's white from the top up, but the bottom is where all of the infusible ink is. So when you place it on your surface and you apply heat to it, all of this color will transfer to your project. So let's go ahead and work on weeding the other sections here. If you have any spots that have the little leftover paper, just go in and clean them up with your weeding tool. Now we're ready to apply this to our project. So we're going to turn on the Easy Press. We're going to check out the Cricut heat guide and see what temperature and settings we need to set it to. We're at the heat guide inside Cricut's website, and this is great because it's a little handy interactive guide, and it will ask you first which machine you're using, so you'll select which machine you're going to use. Then you'll go through and select which heat transfer material you're using. We're using Infusible Ink transfer sheets for this project. Then you'll select which material you're using. We're using cosmetic bags. And once you choose that, it'll show you exactly what settings to use, how long to use them for, the order to apply it for, and if it's a warm peel, cool peel, all the supplies that you'll need, how to prepare your surface, how to create the project, and also there's some handy tips on there for how to take care of your items that you're making. So this gives you the complete guide, all the steps that you need. I definitely recommend it. You'll find it in the description box. So it requires it to be set to 385, so let's double check the temperature here. It is set to 385 right now. The time needs to be set to 60 seconds, but we're going to preheat this for 15 seconds. So I'm going to adjust the timing for 15 seconds for the first round, and then we'll adjust it to the 60 seconds for the next round. Here's the cosmetic bag. If you have a sheet of cardstock that you can cut to fit inside, that's awesome. If not, you can use butcher paper that's folded up multiple layers. So I'm going to cut this to fit inside, so that way I can place this inside. And what this does is it protects your surface from having the ink bleed through to a whole other section. So we'll insert our cardstock inside our bag here. Now that we have our cardstock in the bag, you can take your decal and kind of look at it and make sure that you have it exactly in your mind where you want to place this. We will preheat this whole section here for the 15 seconds that it says. Then we're going to apply the decal, cover it with butcher paper. So I'm going to unroll one of the sheets of butcher paper. So we'll put matte, project with cardstock inside or butcher paper inside. It'll go decal, and then on top is our butcher paper, and then we use our iron. So hopefully that makes sense. Right now we're going to preheat this first though, so I've got this set centered on my mat. I'm going to take this and apply this to the center, and I'm going to press the start button. We're doing this for 15 seconds so that way it can apply, and what this does is it makes it ready to receive the ink for it. Okay, now that that's ready, let's apply our decal and make sure that we have it centered exactly where we want it. I think that looks great. We'll apply our sheet. We're going to adjust the time on this one to 60 seconds. And now we're ready. I'm going to place this on top. We're going to apply light pressure and let this work its magic. We'll remove this. We'll take our sheet of butcher paper and remove that as well. And because this is a warm peel only, we're going to allow this to sit for just a little bit so that way it can cool down. There are 3 levels of peeling that you can do whenever you're working with iron on vinyl or infusible ink. And the first is a hot peel, which is if it was had cooled down just slightly and then you remove it. If it's a warm peel, you let it cool down to where it's warm to the touch. And if it's a cool peel, you let it cool down completely before you remove it. Because this is a warm peel, we're going to leave this sit, let it have its time so that way it gets the best result. You can always check not by touching the decal itself, but by touching somewhat near the section that you worked on. So over here, it's still very hot. We're going to leave this and let this cool down. We're ready to remove this, so I'm just going to lift this up. And look at that nice, bright, professional result. I love how Infusible ink gives you a really great result. So let's let this sit. We're going to put this away and let this cool down, and we'll work on the other pieces. And in case you wanted to see what the difference is after and before, this is before you use the heat with it. This is after, so it takes all of the color and transfers it directly to it. So it'll look like this on the top, and it'll look like that on the bottom. Let's take our next bag and repeat this process. We want to make sure that we have a piece of cardstock in the center. So I'm going to cut a piece of cardstock to fit this. Let's place our cardstock inside our bag. And you may have to move it around and adjust it a little bit just to make sure. You can also lint roll your project before you work on it. That's always something that is great if you want to make sure that there's no lint. These are brand new, so I'm not too worried about the lint. But if you're doing something and you just want to make sure you have the best results possible, that's a great idea. Let's go ahead and we'll preheat this. I'm going to adjust the not the temperature, but the time back down again to 15 seconds. So remembering, we have our mat, we have our project we're working on with a piece of cardstock inside. We have our decal. We're just double checking, making sure that's going to look great. And we have some of our butcher paper that comes with our roll. So let's preheat this. Remember, light pressure. That's ready to go. And this is a great time. If you have heat resistant tape, you can tape this down as well. I'm going to place my butcher paper over the top. We're going to set the time to 60 seconds. Place this on here and start this, and just make sure to apply light pressure. Remove the iron, remove the butcher paper. Now we're going to let this sit and do its thing. It has to sit until it's a warm peel, so we have to let this cool. So let's remove this, and we're going to start at a corner. Nice! I love how you get a nice result every time. And there is what it looks like. Just make sure that when you're working with black, black is probably the hardest color for infusible ink, that you follow the directions exactly. The Cricut has it timed so it's perfect. So you don't need to add extra heat, extra pressure, extra time. Just follow it exactly and you'll get the nice consistent results. So now that we have these two, let's go ahead and make the larger one for the essentials. We need to make sure we have multiple layers of either butcher paper or cardstock inside. And as before, we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to adjust the timing on this to 15 seconds for preheat. So what do you do if you have a larger decal than you have a machine for? This is a problem that a lot of people will face if you have a smaller press. If you have a full-size one, you don't have to worry about this. You could just follow the regular instructions. If you have a smaller press, as you can see, then your actual decal, you could normally work in sections, but since this is infusible ink, we want to make sure that we're not getting heat transferred over to our other section. So we don't want to have, say we do one half, we don't want the other half to have heat leaking into it, and then we have to apply more heat because that'll mess up the quality of our design. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut our design in half here, and I'm going to apply one half and then the next half, and that way I get a nice consistent result. I can allow it to cool in between, and then it will work out the nicest possible. So let's go ahead and we'll start out with the section that we want here. I'm going to kind of mock this up. We want this to be in the center. So I'm gonna mock this up here. I think that's gonna look the best. So I want about approximately that much space on each side. I'm going to remove this section. We're just gonna do the first section here. So what I'm gonna do is I will take this, preheat it for the 15 seconds. We're going to adjust our timing on this to the full 60 seconds. We'll lay down our project where we want it. Apply our butcher paper to the top, making sure that we know exactly where our decal starts. And I'm going to move this over. And we're going to apply light pressure. Okay, let's remove our sheet of butcher paper, and we're going to not touch this. Let this sit for the amount of time. We have to make sure that this is a warm peel rather than a cool peel, so let's let that sit. Once this is done, we'll remove the decal from it, and then we can repeat the process with the other half of our project here. Okay, it's just warm, so we can lift this up. Lovely. Now what we can do is make sure we let this cool down a little bit more, just to make sure that we're not overheating the rest of this section when we apply heat for it. We can go ahead and get the timer reset to the 15 seconds right now while we're waiting. Now that this is cooled down for a bit, what we can do is we'll move our project over just a little bit. We'll preheat this section. With light pressure. Okay. Now we just have to be careful when we're placing this that this looks as close as possible to what we were trying to achieve before. Okay, that's good. Let's take our butcher paper, place that over the top. Let's reset the timer to 60 seconds. Be careful, this is where you could tape the decal down just to make sure that it doesn't shift. So you just want to be extra careful. Okay, we remove our butcher paper. We're going to allow this to sit and cool down a little bit until it becomes a warm peel. Okay, and it's now ready to go. Awesome. So now we have our set of 3 different ones. We'll let this cool down completely before we remove it, and I'll show you what the finished products look like. So what do you guys think of the finished project? I think it turned out really cute, and it's something you can totally use or maybe give as a gift. So really great project, something kind of fun to try with Infusible ink. In the future, I'm going to have some more videos coming up showing Infusible ink with some really beautiful colors and patterns, but I thought this was a great one to start out with because this is an all-purpose kind of project that everyone can use. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any future content. Have an awesome day.